Welcome to the Urbanist Agenda. This is Jason from Not Just Bikes, and I'm joined today with Meredith Glaser, the CEO of the Urban Cycling Institute and professor of cycling at Kent University.
Hello, Jason. So nice to be here.
Yeah, indeed. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So why don't you introduce yourself to the people who aren't familiar with who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am an American transplant to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
15 years ago. Geez, time flies. And I came here initially thinking, I want to work at the intersection of health and urban planning. And what I got myself into was actually something that went beyond that, which was inviting policymakers and planners and engineers from other places like the US and bringing them to the Netherlands for these very intimate and kind of change-worthy events. And I soon found myself with others who were very interested in this topic as well. And I found myself speaking to academics and other people in sort of the bike world in the Netherlands.
Yep.
And then a whole bunch of chain of events happened after that. So I met an academic who became my PhD supervisor. And I also met with a lot of people who were in this process of bringing practitioners and urban planners to the Netherlands. And I ended up doing my PhD on this topic.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's interesting because I used to watch so many bicycle Dutch videos before I came to the Netherlands, and I think I had seen all of them, but that he'd ever made before I moved here. And yet once I came here and started cycling around, there were still a whole bunch of things that I noticed that surprised me. And I was like, if I can have watched all of those videos and read all this stuff about cycling here and still be surprised when I get here, then sometimes I think the only way you can really understand it is by coming here and experiencing it yourself.
Yes. And also what you're getting at is this outsider perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Because that is something I also always bring into the conversation, that as an outsider, and in many cases, I am an outsider here, not only in nationality, but in culture, in perspective. And bringing that outsider perspective gives you a different type of advantage. Being able to kind of open up this box of worms.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so many Dutch people I would talk to and tell what I do, and they say, what? You work on cycling and cycling policy? But cycling is just so normal, It's just something that we all do.
Well, yeah, it's like explaining water to a fish, right? Like
Exactly.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But for many others who are involved in these study tours and many people in our work, cycling is not something that they do every day.
Right.
So it is a special activity, and it is something that is special here in many different ways.
Yeah. Or if they do cycling where they live, it'll still be so different than the way it is here. Like, I also remember the first time I cycled here, I had cycled in Toronto in rush hour traffic lots before I had come to the Netherlands. But the first time I cycled in the Netherlands and it was rush hour, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And it was just like, I pulled over to the right and I was just like, okay, I got to wait for this to calm down a little bit. This is crazy. Because there's a difference between like North American cycling and cycling in traffic and paying attention to cars and all of those things that you normally think about versus cycling with 50 other cyclists around you passing and all this. Yeah, no stoplights and no stop signs and yeah.
And there's so much information entering your system at that time, right?
Yeah.
Cognitively, physiologically, kinesthetically. Right. All of these things are happening at the same time. And I think what also you're getting at is the learning process.
Yes.
Right. That it takes a few days. In fact, I run a summer school that's a 3-week program here in Amsterdam. And we run through Urban Cycling Institute. We run a bunch of other in-person courses here in the Netherlands, but also in other places. We have one coming up in Barcelona at the end of March. But what we notice is that after about 4 days, that's the magic number that people begin to say things like, I was able to think and cycle at the same time.
Yeah.
Or actually on the 4th day, today I was able to actually, use my ear pods and listen to music. The other days I haven't been able to do that because it's been so overwhelming.
Right.
So day 4, it takes a while to get used to this.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I think, people who are coming from a more car-dependent area or context, right? That driving a car is a very different process than riding a bicycle
Yeah, it really is.
with
It really
hundreds
is.
of people.
Yes, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've noticed is that it's actually really funny. Sometimes I'll watch, say, like an urbanist from North America who comes to the Netherlands for the first time, and then they make a video about it or they write an article about it. And it's funny to me how much they don't get. Like, they'll be like, I was on this street and there was no bike lane. I can't believe, like, I thought there were bike lanes here and there was no bike lane on this street. But it's like, no, because they got rid of the cars, right? So they don't need to put a bike lane on every single street. And a lot of that is missed by people. You know, I remember it was very funny when I was cycling around Montreal and there would be like this residential street with just houses on it and nothing else. And then there'd be this big separated bike lane. And I'm kind of like, why? Like, why is this even necessary? But it's because, like, there's still lots of car traffic on those streets, right? And so it's just a very different way of thinking about it. And again, I think it takes some time to be here for a while, at least 4 days, as you say, to really get it, and to be like, oh, yeah, that's why this makes sense.
Yeah. And you are navigating a very dense urban area. You're not only around other people who are cycling, which is a lot of stimulus, right? It's a lot of cognitive stimulus. Your neurons are just firing away, right? And you're also trying to take in all this information that is non-verbal cues, right? So you're also looking at how people are writing. And there are so many unwritten rules of the road in this country, right?
I mean, I think there are in every country, but yeah, there's a lot here when it comes to cycling.
There's a lot here.
A lot.
And they're difficult to articulate. They're difficult to talk about because you do really have to experience it.
Yes.
And this is one thing that I have my students do every year. We write about what are those unwritten rules of the road. And again, you don't see them until you're here for a little while.
Right.
Yeah. And that's an exciting thing to watch that learning process.
So you do study tours sometimes, I know. Actually, I think that's the first time that I ever saw you in a video of you doing study tours. I think maybe it was Bicycle Dutch or someone, you taking people around. So what are those and like, how do they work?
Well, study tours, there's a lot of different flavors of study tours. So there's, student groups, right, who are coming here as part of a study abroad program. And they're from all over the world and they're coming to the Netherlands to learn about sustainability or urban planning or transportation, cycling. But then there are also policymakers and engineers, urban planners who are from one city. And as part of what's called a delegation, so a group of pretty senior individuals, they're part of a delegation who are coming to the Netherlands or other places to learn about a certain topic. And those are the delegations that we most often engage with. And there's not very many of them. We do about 3 or 4 a year.
Right.
They're very intensive. I mean, it's basically a mini conference for 15 to 20 people. So we are programming this intimate 4 to 5 day event with experts from the Netherlands, let's say, and really thinking about the whole learning experience for this group. So again, there's a lot of different flavors of study visits. And I would say the most impactful ones are study visits where the individuals know of each other. So these are people who probably work together to some degree.
These will be like government people?
Government, but also the key other stakeholders that they interact with. So in a city government, you have people like the mayor and all of the people around the mayor who influence the mayor's decisions, right? You also have city council. You have the chief engineer. You have the head of the transportation department. You have the head of Department of Public Works. You've got all of these people who touch the street, right, in some way. And that could also be the police, fire.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That could be, school superintendents. It could be a lot of different types of what are called actors, right? Actors in the urban landscape who influence decisions about the street. And the street is, it's one of the most precious public spaces in cities, right? It's the city's largest asset, really, is streets and how streets are made. And what my job is on these study visits is to widen the understanding of what these streets can be for.
I mean, they're not just for moving lots of cars.
They're not just for moving lots of cars. They're for children playing, for people bicycling, for greenery and, economic activities. Our streets are precious spaces that are conduits for the economy and climate and justice and, all these amazing, good feeling things. But it's very difficult for those like engineers and transportation planners to get that bigger picture. And coming to the Netherlands is a very easy way to kind of get that bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah, so study visits involve these policymakers and people who are influencing how streets are designed, how they're made, how they're used. And on a study visit, we usually target conversations about change. And we spend a lot of time interviewing these people before they come on the study visit to architect conversations about change. So usually this involves talking about ongoing projects in their city, policies that are maybe, coming up or being drafted now. Maybe there's a new department head who's very excited about complete streets or different types of arrangements of streets or a new transit system, right?
Right.
There's a lot of different reasons why people could get excited about change. A great example is a new mayor. When there's a change in leadership, that's a great time to think about change.
Right. Yeah.
So that's usually a really important impetus, is understanding that constellation and how we can create conversations that facilitate, different understandings about change.
I mean, it sounds amazing. When you do these things, you'll have a bunch of different people from different departments, as you said. Some of these people must be pretty pro-cycling, but other people must be more skeptical. Like, how does that work out in practice? Like, what kind of reactions do you get from people? And, well, I guess I'm also curious, what kind of conceptions do they come into the study tour with?
Yeah. So this is exactly what I studied in my PhD.
Nice.
That there needs to be the skeptical people in the room.
Right.
That they serve a very important function, because there's not only great dialogue that happens, right, when there are people from a variety of perspectives, but also that there needs to be a respected person in the room who is a proponent of cycling to some degree.
Someone relatively senior in the government or something like that.
Or a city council person, right, who is well respected across party lines.
Right.
Or, a chief engineer who obviously would have more of a neutral stance. They're not allowed to be very, political in that way. Yeah. So there needs to be that respected person who's a proponent. And there also needs to be some other respected people who are skeptics. And what's so exciting about those conversations is that they feed each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the devil's advocate thing, right? So, it provides something to keep it from being too one-sided, but also I think it will bring up the issues that maybe the proponents never really thought about too much.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the effects of study visits, is being able to see perspectives across a range of ideas, right? Being able to see from the other person's perspective how they're thinking. The most common phrase I heard in my interviews after study visits were, "We were all able to get on the same page." And
that's about the most you can ask for, to be honest.
Exactly. And I heard that from everyone I interviewed. We were able to get on the same page. We were able to, come together and build consensus, basically, around new ideas. So that also means that those who were proponents, came a little closer to those who were skepticals, and those who were skeptics came a little closer to those who were proponents. And I don't mean to picture it as very binary, like we're anti and these people are pro, because there's such a spectrum. Nobody came to the Netherlands, no one was forced to come.
Right. Right.
They all came on their own will.
Right. And so they had to be at least a little bit open.
They had to be at least a little bit open. And they knew from the beginning that they were going to be riding bikes, that we're going to be seeing a lot of transit, a lot of cycling, a lot of green projects. We're going to a country that is mostly progressive, right? Yes, there are centrists and, center-right politicians here in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
especially in cities. There are, maybe a little bit more left. But these people are all coming on their own will and to learn.
Right.
And that's, I think, the primary variable here is that everyone was very willing to learn. In the interviews I did with people before the visit, everyone was excited, right? Everyone was looking forward to a visit to the Netherlands, the place of best practices for so many different things. They were very interested in the cultural exchange. They're very interested in learning about how other countries and other cities operate and work when it comes to transportation. So I think that curiosity was really important too, that you're coming into a learning experience being open.
Right.
And
right.
Adults are like that, right? Adults are very different learners than kids. And we all as adults come into a learning experience with all of the baggage that we already have. And especially in this type of situation where you're supposed to be a professional, right?
Right, yes.
So people come in with their baggage, their perspectives from their profession, their experience.
Yes, and all of their biases as well.
All of their biases. And then the added interesting nuance of the social dynamics, right? Because clearly in these types of study visits, there's all types of power dynamics at play. And that's also fascinating to watch unfold before your eyes, right? That there's the city manager who holds the purse strings.
Yeah.
And he's standing there with his arms across his chest a bit. I don't know about this biking business. I'm too good for this a little bit. I'm going to be on my phone because other things are more important.
Right.
And then by day 4, he is smiling and engaged and talking to his chief engineer.
Once he finally realizes the bike stuff is actually cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And those are the stories that I loved. I really have so many vivid memories of, like this city manager who was, not so friendly to begin with.
Right.
In the interview before the visit, he would say things like, no, I'm unfamiliar with what a protected bike lane is. And if that would come across my desk, I wouldn't give it the time of day. Right. 2, afterwards, understanding all the jargon, knowing what a protected bike lane is, knowing what a protected intersection looks like and feels like, and saying, I am ready to work together with our planning department on how to make these projects go faster.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand a lot of people just don't care about this stuff. They have other things to worry about and they're just busy with their job and everything's been car centric forever. And that's the only thing that comes across their desk and everything else is just more work. And so I can understand that a lot of these people just don't care. They're just too busy with other things.
Yeah.
And they've never had to even think about it. But it's not like it's difficult to understand or anything, especially when you're here.
No.
You just have to take the time to go through it.
And that's where the experience comes in. Of
course. Yeah.
Right? There's city planners and politicians, they have so many competing agendas on their plate. And to come to a place like the Netherlands that has such a matured context for cycling, politically, economically.
Yeah.
So all these politicians and, civil servants related to transportation, they all have so much on their plate in terms of competing agendas, right? Water, sanitation,
of course.
Public participation. I mean, all these different things that they rarely have time to step back and to try to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And so that's another aspect of these types of study trips that comes to play is that they are given permission to really learn to have, an eye-opening experience. And that's the other common phrase that I heard in all of my interviews and in our work today is that, wow, it was so eye-opening. And it really is coming to another place, seeing different cultures and people and having these interactions, I think is the really eye-opening experience. So combined with the experience of cycling together.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's what is so fascinating too, is that these are individuals who don't really cycle very often at home. right?
No, but I probably wouldn't cycle where they live either, right?
No,
I mean, that's
no,
the thing.
but some do.
Right.
But some are like the advocate
Yeah,
or
sure.
the bike ped planner from the city
Yeah.
who are maybe like a little too gung-ho biking cyclists, right? And then there's the people who literally have not biked since they were kids. I've also had people who had to learn how to bike to come on the study visit.
That's going to be intense.
That's intense, but also so rewarding at the same
Right.
time
Yeah.
to see them smiling and really opening up and saying, thank you for this experience, you know? So this social learning experience is also really important, that they are not just cycling, they're cycling together
Right.
as a group of influential people, right, from a city. And they're cycling in a place where it is totally safe to cycle. And they're doing it in a way that they're also independent sometimes. So, you know, we make sure that there's plenty of independent time where they can go off as a pair or independently. One guy had to go get a haircut. I remember one of the city council members from a city, he's like, oh, I really needed a haircut. So I went off and got a haircut. And that was the first time really using the system on his own.
Right.
And he came back smiling so big. He was like, I got lost, you know, and I almost ran into another bicyclist, but it was great, you know. And he's just glowing.
Right.
He's glowing from that independent experience. And we want to make sure that there's those spontaneous opportunities for learning in our study tours. But so that social experience is really important, that they're doing this together, that they're enjoying their emotions are clearly at play here, right? You can't help but smile sometimes.
It's true.
You
like,
know?
yeah, I mean, I do that sometimes, even now after being here for 7 years. Sometimes I'll just be like, oh, this is
My
great.
God,
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not.
And sometimes
when
it's not.
raining and miserable. And other times it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, I love this.
And I love that you say sometimes it's not, because those moments are also really important.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, it can be intense.
Yeah.
And some people have had, you know, worrisome kind of feelings about, or anxiety, right, about being on such a busy bike path with so many other people. And that's why it takes those few days. We don't recommend doing a, you know, 1-day study visit in the Netherlands. Like, you got to do 3, 4, 5 days to get that acquaintance and familiarity.
Otherwise, it's just going to be so foreign a concept that you're just going to be like, at the end of the day, just like, I don't even know what happened.
Yeah. So foreign.
Yeah.
So that social learning experience is really important. And then also, of course, as important is talking to their peers in the Netherlands or other places, wherever we're going.
Right.
We're going to Copenhagen in a few months as well. And so it's not just the Netherlands, right? There's other places in the world. But being able to talk to those experts who are here brings in another element of learning, right? And they're trying to figure out, okay, how do road taxes work? How does maintenance work?
Right.
How does design work in this city? Why are you guys using bricks? What are the pavers? You know, and everything is so fascinating at so many different levels to all these different people. And we really curate the program to make sure that each perspective is heard, right? If we've got engineers, we want probably one engineer from the Netherlands to talk and give them that perspective, and a city councilor and a policymaker. That means that all the people in the room are getting their chance to have their perspective, you know, seen and heard.
Right.
And that's a really important part of the learning experience as well.
I remember talking to a traffic engineer from the US who moved to the Netherlands. And I remember him mentioning to me that one of the things that surprised him when he started talking to engineers here is that they were called transportation engineers, not traffic engineers. And he's like, I never thought about that before. Like, I always thought of myself as like the traffic engineer. I was responsible for traffic.
Yeah.
But they're responsible for transportation.
Yeah.
And he said that kind of blew his mind, because he's like, oh, yeah, we have a cycling group. They're the ones that do the cycling, and they're in the urban planning group. But I'm the traffic engineer, you know? And every time they come to me and they say, well, we need you to build a bike lane or something like that, I'd be like, okay, well, I have to look at how this is going to affect level of service and all of that kind of stuff. And it just never occurred to him that that could be part of his job as well. Like, transportation could be his job and not just moving traffic.
Yeah. And you know what? Words matter.
Yes, I think they do.
Words
Yes.
matter, and what positions are called, how departments are named. That's always something that's very curious from Americans, or actually a lot of our delegates are very interested in how organizations are set up.
Yep.
And they're always in awe that, for instance, in Amsterdam, it's the Department of Public Space and Sustainability that houses transportation.
Right.
And transportation is not just level of service, moving cars, it's actually public space design.
Right.
And that's like mind-blowing
Yeah,
to
and
a
that's
lot
a
of
fundamental
Americans.
difference,
It's a
right? To say,
huge
like, we
difference.
have a bunch of public space. How are we going to use it? And
Yeah.
transportation is one of the ways we could use it.
Exactly.
It's a very, very different way of looking at it than we have a traffic engineering department.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we have a Department of Public Works
Right.
that, designs streets and maintains them. But then there's also the Department of Transportation, which is a totally different entity that comes up with policies,
Yeah.
right? And how do those two entities even interact, and how do they get along, and how do they coordinate?
I remember in Toronto, there was the Department of Traffic Services, but then there was also the Transit Department, the TTC, and they were separate.
Yep.
So there was like the transportation services, but then there was the public transit. And I'm like,
Mhm.
aren't that kind of the same thing there,
Yeah.
guys? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of...
Well, and then there's like the Public Transit Authority.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
and then you get regional authorities as well.
regional
and
authorities.
Sometimes they have lines that come into the city and
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why I love this work, is because cities cannot just copy and paste.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of my work is based around this idea of policy transfer, that you can kind of go search out a policy or program or, design guideline from somewhere else, and you can borrow it, you can take it, and then you can replicate it. And there's a lot of research about this topic called policy transfer. And they propose, the researchers from in the 90s, they propose this as a very linear process, that you go search it out, you see if it fits, and then you basically take it home.
Right.
But, for public space and street design and mobility, that's a very particular case that you simply cannot copy and paste certain policies or programs, because cities are so fundamentally different from one another, even within the same state or the same country.
Right.
Right? Like the US has these like strong mayor cities,
Yes.
and weak mayor cities.
Yes.
And there's cities in Spain even that functionally operate very different from each other. So you cannot just copy and paste. And that is why we always go through this very rigorous process of interviewing and really understanding what are the goals of the city, what are the milestones that they're achieving, what are some of the current projects that they have big burning questions for, because that is what this study visit can be based on.
Right.
Because at the end of the study visit, you want to have something to take home. And that's what we aim for every time, is that there needs to be some sort of learning objective that is shared among the group. Humans, and especially adults, are very goal-oriented. If you enter into a learning experience just kind of humble, walking around, blah, 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 I don't know what I'm doing, it's probably not going to be a very great experience.
Right.
But if you come into it knowing, I want to better understand X, and you tell someone that, well, you're probably more likely going to achieve that. And you're going to be more interested in the topic and more invested and more motivated in the learning process.
Right.
So when we're done with the visit, towards the end, we have a big, long debrief for a couple hours of really trying to hone in on what actions that they want to take away. And this is a longer, 2.5 hour process where they share. They actually say what they want to do in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years. And that's a really important process of telling other people what you want to do, who you want to talk to, and what you want to get done. And that is a huge sense of accomplishment by the end.
You mentioned earlier that you go to different cities like Copenhagen as well. And I'm curious about that because one of the things that I've been told by some other people when they look at the Netherlands as an example, they say they can't use the Netherlands as an example because like it's too far, right? It's like if you go from like Toronto to Amsterdam, it's just like they don't even know how to get there, right? Like they don't have to go from one to the other.
Yep.
And it just seems impossible. Whereas, speaking to a guy who had been to the Netherlands a few times, who worked in urban planning in Canada, and he was saying like, yeah, the Netherlands just seemed impossible. But then once he went to Copenhagen, he was like, oh, I get it. Yeah, we could do that because it seemed like more similar to Toronto.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is what he was saying.
Yeah, there's definitely some logic to wanting to be able to squint your eyes a little and see your city.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think everybody kind of wants to do that if
Yeah.
they're on a tour like this, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be looking at it to say, like, I love this. I love where I am right now.
Yeah.
How can I make the place that I'm from more like this? And if they can't envision it, and people are bad at this. I mean, that's why houses do like staging furniture because people can't imagine an empty
It's hard
highway.
to imagine. Yeah, it's hard to imagine. I think I've been to Copenhagen so many times and also run study visits and master classes there. And we've also held study visits in cities in Spain, like Barcelona. We're going in a couple weeks to run a course there. That's more geared towards like tactical changes, quick changes. I think that there's a possibility to have an excellent learning experience in all of these types of contexts. And some of the most important inputs are the people around you, the ability to learn independently. So using the system by yourself or with one other person, right? And then actually having dialogue, right? Having a dialogue about change. And those three components is basically what I found in my research, that without those, you may not have a more optimal learning experience. But I don't know if it really matters where you go.
Right.
We were just in Paris for 2 study visits, actually. And Paris is certainly making a huge amount of progress on their cycling vision. It's been very fast, right?
Yes,
very quick.
Extremely fast. It's remarkable, actually.
It's been remarkable. And what a valuable case study it is to explore, leadership and increasing capacity of a city staff.
Yeah.
They went from a team of 1 in their cycling team to a team of 25 people.
Wow.
Right? In a matter of a few years. And these are people who are designing the bike paths. And the chief would say up front, we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
We don't have the capacity, really. I mean, we have designers and they're doing their best, but nobody has training in this, right?
Right. And they're trying to do the whole city.
They're trying to do the whole city.
This is always one of those tricks when you're improving a city, because the thing is, there are things that you could implement in certain cities that are already a little further along that would work very well. But then if you drop that into another city, it just doesn't. And I've seen that too, like, how we have in the Netherlands, we have those, I forget what they're called. We have those lanes that are like, they typically are outside of cities. They're narrowed, and then they'll have like these suggested bike lanes on the side.
Yeah.
And the colors, and then the lane is not wide enough for a car to pass. And so, you have to go into one and the other. And I remember some California city just plopped that down, and everyone was just like, what the hell is this? Nobody knew how to use it. It just didn't work at all. And, they'll look at it and say like, wow, but it works in the Netherlands. I'm like, yeah, but you got to look at the context in which that's been installed, right? Like, it is just totally different. And I think that's always a challenge to look at like, okay, yeah, fine, this is where we want to be. Even a protected intersection. We see these being installed all the time in various cities all around the world. And they are a very good idea. I wish Copenhagen had them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was just there a few months ago. But yeah, sometimes I see them just plop down, and they'll be like 2 small residential streets, and they'll stick a protected intersection in there. And I'm just kind of like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah. But in Paris, we had to be very strategic about our bike rides, and even our walking route. And then crafting conversations in a way to make sure that we're getting those really meaningful discussions going. So yes, Paris was an excellent experience. And I think there was a really fantastic amount of learning. But it also came with challenges. It was more difficult to have 20 people cycling around the city.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a work in progress, right? Like, I remember that I went cycling. I haven't been there in a few years now, but I made a video about it. I think it was in 2021 or 2022. And I met up with a cycling advocate there, and he took me around, and it was great. and we saw like lots of good things. But then I remember when I started cycling on my own, I got in trouble very quickly. I was, took a wrong turn and I was like, oh shit. And I'm in this
Where am I?
giant area.
Yeah.
They have some areas in Paris where there's like no street lane markings and cars are just all over the place. And it's just like, what I needed to just pull over and be like, okay, I got to sort this out because it's still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the thing is, though, you really don't want to have people have a bad experience.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Or if they do, you want to make sure that they feel somewhat comfortable or safe. And there were actually a few people on that trip who didn't feel comfortable biking. So we just got a pedicab for them. And they followed us along on a bike ride with the pedicab. And it was perfect.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it went perfect. I've also done other study tours where we have people in a cargo bike. So like I'm driving the cargo bike and the person is sitting in the cargo bike.
Right.
So I think just giving them that city at eye level experience is really important.
Yeah, that is interesting. And not everybody is going to be comfortable with it. But that is something, though, with the Netherlands. It's like it's really hard to get yourself in trouble here.
Yes.
It's really hard.
That's where the Netherlands comes out on top, is that I know that people will be safe.
Yeah.
And I know that they will have maybe an overwhelming experience, right? But I always talk about this, that it will be overwhelming. There's a lot of people around. Your neurons are firing, and that's part of it. So just try to embrace it. I always tell people, try to imagine being above yourself and just looking down, kind of harness your inner anthropologist and just sort of have an out-of-body experience of awareness, right? Seeing that you are in this peloton of people and you are all sort of working together, right?
I mean, I tell people just ride slowly and stay on the right.
Yeah.
But I think you want to go a little bit beyond that.
Well, I love that, though, too. I mean, for the summer course I run, we don't give people any instructions at all. We just say, go ride. We're not responsible. You signed the waiver. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but they're actually usually professionals as well.
Right.
About half are professionals or even like very senior. We've had professors emeritus and very senior people from, Alta Planning and these big consulting firms come from the World Bank. Yeah, it's a fantastic course. We're not running it this year. It'll be back next year, a 3-week course.
Right. So not everybody can come on a study tour. You don't actually do them that often. But for people who are coming to visit the Netherlands, what advice would you give them on cycling here? Or what would you tell them to look out for?
Like as a tourist.
As a tourist, yeah. Or as a interested, like I get a lot of people who are urbanists, or maybe they do work in advocacy or in city planning or in traffic engineering, and they come here. And I'm never quite sure what to tell them, like what to look for.
Well, one is you could take our online course. It's free. It's on Coursera. It's called Unraveling the Cycling City.
I will put a link in the show notes.
You can take our course so that you could actually learn about the Dutch system.
Right.
You learn about, land use and transportation, culture. You learn about the bike train system. So you learn all these things. I mean, you could also learn these things on your channel for sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, they're all spread out all over the place.
Spread out all over the place.
I have lots and lots of good information, but it's like the way YouTube works, you have to make an interesting video and then include the information within it and sort of drip feed it to people.
Yeah.
It's hard to use it as a reference afterwards.
Yeah. And this is like a 25-hour online course. And then, you could definitely sign up for one of our bike excursions that are about 2 hours and take you through some of the planning and policy and innovation that Amsterdam is doing. Otherwise, I would just suggest go for a ride, and try to find yourself what are those unwritten rules of cycling. We actually have a map that I could also put in the link that includes certain public space changes around Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah.
And you can look at, 20 years ago, what it used to look like on the map, and then you see it in person. So you can identify what changes have taken place. You can talk to locals. You can ask them, what has been the effect of removing 180 on-street car parking spaces here in the Frans Hal Buurt, right?
Right.
What's been the outcome of adding a parking garage, at Amsterdam Central Station? Bike parking garage.
Yes, bike parking garage. Let's be clear.
Bike parking garage. And you could go behind Central Station and you could look at the shared space area where there's tons of people walking and cycling and getting on and off the ferry.
That area
And
still makes me nervous
I
even after
know.
many years. I don't know how I feel
know.
about that one.
Well, so with a lot of our student groups, we run a scavenger hunt,
Oh, yeah.
which is one of my favorite activities. I got tired of doing bike tours. So instead of bike tours, we send people out on a scavenger hunt in pairs. They have a list of missions that they have to uncover. Some of the missions have to do with history or like public space design or culture. I don't know. There's like 100 missions. They can't finish them all in a day. They have to choose. And one of them, my favorite one, is going behind Central Station in this shared space area where, there's no street per se.
Right.
There's just this like mixture, a constellation, a ballet of people moving, and standing still. And, I don't know what they're doing. Some people are just like picking their nose.
Well, I remember I almost hit a tourist there who was just with her wheelie suitcase and just like walking diagonally right through everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Well, so you did this mission. So the mission is to go behind Central Station and your partner has to walk aimlessly kind of through this shared space, or they have to drop their phone and then the other person has to watch what happens.
Oh, I would actually love to see that. That would be thoroughly entertaining.
And so we send the groups out on this. We've also done this with professional groups too, who are doing team building type of stuff. And then we come back and we have a 2-hour talk about what you learned.
Right.
And it's my favorite session because it works every time. They come back with the most thoughtful, engaging questions. They come back asking things like, how did this all start? And what can cities from the US learn from the Netherlands? And how does culture actually play a role in mobility? And what about the people who are not cycling?
Right.
And where are they in this picture, right? So they come back with such thoughtful questions, and we have a whole 2-hour session really just on those questions that they come up with. And this mission always comes up too, that we walked aimlessly through this shared space area, and guess what? Nothing happened. Like all of the bicyclists and people walking just flowed around us. It was like water.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I mean, it's just so much fun.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of these things that people need to understand, that bicycles are not cars.
Yeah.
They really, really are not. They're not pedestrians either.
No.
But there's something different. And they really, really do work differently. And if you design around their strengths and weaknesses, then everything gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my other recommendation then would be, if you're coming to the Netherlands on a trip and, you're impressed or you're inspired, think about what that could do for your city. And then take some action on it. Write an email to your council member saying, hey, we need a better public space in this area, or we need bike parking over here, right? I mean, I think so many people tend not to get involved in their local politics because of, fear or mistrust or something, whatever it is.
Sometimes the procedures can be a little obtuse.
Of course. You may not know even who to email.
Yeah, who to talk to, how to deal with it.
Yeah, how to deal with it.
Yeah.
But that's where I think people can educate themselves on how to do that. And especially if you're in a position where you feel like you can do that, write that email, send that letter, talk to your council member.
Tell them they need to go on a study tour to the Netherlands.
Tell them they need to go on a study tour to the Netherlands. Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing. If you are in a position of power in your city on any level, right? I mean, this should be a bigger question for you. What can you do? What responsibility can you take to make change? We have to move towards more sustainability in the way that we move. And we have to think about our streets as places for people and kids and not just moving cars. So what can you do? What is within your realm of power? Whether that's, hey, let's make a bike bus, right? And bike kids to school.
Yeah, that worked really well in our neighborhood in Toronto.
Yeah. Or, hey, this parking spot outside of my house could become something else for a day, right? There's so many creative ideas out there. And I think the question is, what can you do? On a study visit, we always, like I said, we aim for what types of actions can you do. And one just came to my mind that I love. The fire chief from one city was on our study visit. And of course, he was very interested in fire and emergency services on bike paths. And how does that work? And how does it work in the Netherlands on such narrow streets? And so, of course, we had to kind of take a little detour to a fire station in the Netherlands. And
that's great.
He was like a little kid in a candy shop, oh my God, you guys have this type of engine and you guys can fit more people in your vehicles.
Oh my God, that is a whole other, I have a video about that, but the differences in the way fire response is done here versus North America is just crazy. And the size of the trucks is just
of the trucks.
Night and day.
Yeah. But what he was excited about was that these trucks in the Netherlands were smaller, but they fit more people and more water.
Yes. I don't understand how that's possible.
His mind was blown.
Yeah. Honestly, when I was doing the research for that video, that was coming up and I was like, there's laws of physics are the same here, right? Like how?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild.
And so in his final action plan that he made, he said, I want to go home and I want to look at procuring a small fleet of new trucks that will fit on our, all ages, all abilities bike network.
Right.
And then he went home and he did it.
That's amazing.
6 months after, I interviewed him again and I asked him, during the study visit, you mentioned this action you'd like to do. He was like, oh, yeah, I already did it. We've got 2 trucks.
That's incredible.
2 trucks. So
because
to me,
you
that's
don't
a
need
huge
to replace
impact.
your whole fleet either. It's crazy to me that they use the same trucks out in like car-dependent suburbia and in the middle of the city that was built in the 1700s. It's like, why?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So, people like that who, and in this context, the fire department signs off on every single street design review. Right. So they're a key stakeholder in how streets are designed and how fast those projects get delivered.
Yes.
So having the chief of fire on your side, that's a huge win. Right. So yes, he was invited to this study visit and he was blown away. So that type of impact, I think, may seem very small. It may seem very incremental. But if you look at it on this individual level, it's actually huge. Right. Being able to say that the fire chief, his perspective was totally changed. Into more of bike friendly. And those projects I heard also were getting approved much quicker. So, these are small instances of change within this huge system, which is, local authorities or local government, right? It's a huge mess. Many cities are just a huge mess of politics and bureaucracy and processes and procedure. And one small change like this does seem small, but it's a big one within the system.
Right. Well, I think that's about as good a place to end as any, honestly. But any last thoughts about this topic, about study visits and what people can do?
I think I just want to come back to, what can you do? If the whole study visit thing is like, I don't know anybody who's ever done this.
Right.
But you travel. Hey, use your travel as a way to rethink your own perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks
you.
For coming
on,
is
Meredith.
So fun. I love this.
Yeah,
Let's do it
I
again.
Can have you on again, for sure.
Bye.
Thank you. That's all we have on the agenda for today. I hope you enjoyed listening to it almost as much as we enjoyed making it. I really enjoy talking to other content creators about what they find interesting, and a lot of the people I have on this podcast I met since joining Nebula. Nebula is this subscription streaming service created by and for educational content creators and the people who love their content. Nebula has all sorts of educational content, from videos to podcasts to classes by your favorite creators, as well as Nebula Originals, which are high-budget productions. Honestly, Nebula is such a great platform, and I'm so happy for my content to be available there. If you use our special link, which is nebula.tv/agenda, you'll get a discount off an annual membership, which comes to only $30 a year, which I think is a fantastic deal. So check out Nebula at nebula.tv/agenda and see if there's something of interest to you. At the very least, you'll be able to hear every episode of the Urbanist Agenda a little bit earlier than everyone else, so you can get the inside scoop on what we're plotting and scheming. Thanks again for listening, and maybe next time you'll be listening on Nebula.